And of course, today we're talking about UFC 302. It's going down in my neck of the woods, Northeast, stand up, East Coast, Beast Coast. It's going down in New Jersey, the Prudential Center. And what are we talking about exactly? You guys know we're talking about a lightweight title fight. It's going down between Islam Makhachev and he's the reigning defending champion. Everybody knows he's on a great win streak, 13 wins in a row in the promotion. Fantastic. Tied with some of the all-time greats. On the other side stands a legend of the octagon, the all-time winning knockout leader in this lightweight division. We're talking, of course, about the Diamond, Dustin Poirier, his last chance at the title, his last chance at immortality. It's a fascinating fight. It's a fantastic piece of matchmaking. And I think it's only facilitated by the recent turn of events, right? We had Max Holloway eliminate Justin Gaethje from title contention with a thunderous knockout. He's not going to be competing for probably a calendar year. So there was no way he was going to step in front of Dustin Poirier. So he was a little bit the beneficiary of that happenstance. On the other hand, Arman Sarukian, he's been in the octagon twice. He had that 15-minute affair with Charles Oliveira, had some back and forth minutes, and he actually turned down the title fight. Enter Dustin Poirier, right? He always wanted this opportunity. He fought Benoit Saint Denis. A lot of people, myself included, thought he was, kind of up shit's creek without a paddle against Benoit Saint Denis. Why? Benoit Saint Denis brings pressure. He brings grappling. He brings pace. He brings intensity. He's got a never say die attitude. And frankly, it was a great performance, a career performance from Dustin Poirier. Did we see some, deficiencies from Benoit Saint Denis? Sure. The lack of head movement was a little bit exposed there. Did we see the effects of that staph infection? Maybe he started to slow down a little bit earlier than he normally would. Yeah, maybe we saw that too. But I think the ultimate deciding factor there is we saw some strategic adjustments from Dustin Poirier. If you guys have watched my content for a while, you've seen I made a couple videos about this, especially on Twitter, on my Instagram as well, where I talked about Dustin Poirier's use of the guillotine, right? He's roundly mocked. Why is he going for the guillotine? He never finishes it. And even Islam Makhachev had a couple choice words about that, right? How great is this guillotine? He never finishes. But then in subsequent interviews, he's talked about, no, listen, we're drilling a lot on getting our head out of the guillotine, working through these positions, making sure we don't get stuck there because we respect his guillotine. We know it's very world-class. And when you talk about what Dustin Poirier does with the position, he doesn't use the guillotine to try and finish the fight every time. When he went against Khabib, guys, I posted this video as well. I'll repost it. Make sure that this stuff is all readily available if you guys want to take a look. But Dustin Poirier is the example I use of flat backing to defend the guillotine. He had Khabib Nurmagomedov, a guy who never lost in a professional mixed martial arts bout, in a pretty serious guillotine choke. And even though it was in the bottom half guard, you saw that Khabib started to get a little bit nervous, right? And he wanted to respect the choke. So he flat backed himself briefly to get some space to alleviate pressure, to fight hands. And then he was able to come back on top. And Dustin sold out in that fight. He was looking for the guillotine. He thought he had it, and he pulled so hard. He spent his arms, and he just had nothing left to give. You saw he was breaking mentally. He said, I can't get this guy off me in the corner. That's when you knew it was over, right? He just didn't have the wherewithal to deal with the pressure, the insane pace that Khabib was bringing. And Khabib sometimes was reckless with his pressure. He gets in your face. He chases you down. He comes after you. And Islam is not quite like that. They both have similar skills in terms of their ability to get on top, to ride somebody, to get to their dominant grappling positions, to use their wrestling, to push people back along the fence. But some of the differences is, Islam's a lot more reserved as a fighter. He's a little bit more selective with his shots. He likes to go out there and find his opportunities. He's not afraid to go strike with guys. He's a lot more comfortable on the feet. And so some of those differences, I think, could be advantages for Dustin Poirier. Not to say that it's an advantage, he's the better fighter, but to say, compare the matchup of him against Khabib. I'm always in your face. I'm always trying to wrestle. I'm always going to keep that pressure on high, compared to somebody like Islam, who's a little bit more, choice with his movements, a little bit more deliberate with his shots, a little bit more selective. He doesn't throw as aggressively. Khabib sometimes would put his head down, close his eyes, and just throw overhand rights and lefts, right? And he knew guys have to respect me because if I go for this takedown at any point, I could change the level of the fight. But Islam's a little bit more controlled, and so he could definitely take you down at any time. He's got good shot entries. He's got an ability to work from the upper body as well. His judo, his ability to use the clinch and the fence line, his ability to seek out trips, his Greco-Roman wrestling, all of that checks out. He's a very talented and skilled fighter. But I think that both guys in this matchup have a lot to offer. And what Dustin Poirier showed in the Benoit Saint Denis fight, and this is the point I was trying to raise from the beginning, is the guillotines that he was going for, he didn't sell out for them, right? When you looked at the early rounds, he thought a few times, hey, I might have him in a position where I could guard pull this, where I could get it in a position to finish. But I told you guys, you're not going to guillotine somebody like Benoit Saint Denis, because he's just not going to give up on himself. He's not going to make it easy. And he's also a good grappler, a talented grappler in his own right. That's the basis of his skill set. Yeah, he's got some power on the feet. He could trade there, but he's very potent with his grappling. And that's where his bread has been buttered in the UFC, taking guys like Thiago Moises, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion, to the ground, battering him on the ground and finishing him there. That's the kind of thing that you see from Benoit, that pressure style, kind of like Khabib. And so I thought that Benoit was going to win that fight. He was a minus 130 favorite when I bet it. He ended up closing about minus 225. And Dustin Poirier did a sensational job of making Benoit Saint Denis fatigued. He said, if you want to try and wrestle and grapple, you're going to pay a big price. And what he did was he kept putting him in these guillotine scenarios, and each time he got a little bit more crafty with how he would do it. So at the beginning, he's looking for guard pulls. He's looking to, set up a guillotine that's going to finish the fight. He knows he's got a quality guillotine. He always says, I want to get one of these before I retire. And he wasn't able to lock it up. But what he was able to do is he started to look, instead of going guard pull, he started to go elbow over the top. He started to look for the prayer grips. He started to make it so Benoit Saint Denis had to make a defensive reaction as opposed to continuing his takedown attempt. So when you force somebody into a defensive sequence, that's what it's all about. We had to see Benoit Saint Denis in the early going flat back himself to avoid the guillotine. That consumes a lot of energy. That puts some doubt in your mind, and it makes you a little bit more hesitant to shoot the takedown in the same way. And when we were seeing Benoit Saint Denis come out for round two, he definitely looked a little bit fatigued, but he was still getting to the same offense. He was still going out there seeking the takedowns. And instead of guard pulling, Poirier is now standing and trying to lock the elbow guillotine, like the high elbow, right? He's trying to go high elbow while he's still standing over the man. And that is what was so impressive, is he made an adjustment, stopped going to the ground with it. And I can just tell you guys, if you start going for high elbow guillotine standing on the feet, guys are going to let go of the takedown, and they're going to be a lot more reserved going in for that shot attempt. And so every time he would start to do this, it would create more fatigue, it would create more doubt, and it would create more space. And so then Poirier starts opening up with those body shots and the hooks upstairs. We know he can knock anybody's lights out, right? Justin Gaethje was able to clip him in this most recent iteration of the fight. But we saw he went to war with Justin Gaethje in the past, and he absolutely drowned him. A guy who's known for having those long, drawn-out fights. He was able to beat him down the stretch. He was able to go leg kick for leg kick with a guy like Justin Gaethje, who's known for his leg kicking. Same thing happened against Jim Miller. So you see that this guy, Dustin Poirier, he's kind of got a lot of different tricks up his sleeve, right? He's got the low kicks that we saw, go to town on Conor McGregor, right? And ended his night prematurely as well, kind of got him out of his stance, got him off balance, and set up the knockout shots. So what have we seen from Dustin Poirier in his recent bouts that tell us he's got something to offer? Number one, he's not just going for the guillotine recklessly. He's kind of got a strategy, a method to his madness, if you will. He's trying to exhaust people. He's trying to exact a cost if you want to continuously shoot takedowns on him. And he's trying to use it to create space and separation. And I think that he did a great job of doing that, especially as the fight progressed. His coaches and corner kept telling him to get away from it, but he kept realizing and understanding this guy's not going to relent in terms of his pressure forward unless I give him a reason to stop. And putting somebody on the verge of being choked unconscious, that's a great way to get their respect and get them to stop putting their head down and looking for takedowns. So when people are forced to seek takedowns with their back straight and their head up, it does set up more shots to the body. It does set up more opportunities to elbow, punch, and knee off the break. So I think that when you're looking at I think Dixon makes a great point here, right? Islam will never tap. He'd rather break or go to sleep. I tend to agree with you there. But that's the beautiful thing about a choke, right? There's no being a tough guy about a choke. You go to sleep like everybody else when you're in a very serious choke. And I do think that Dustin Poirier has the capability to choke him unconscious. I'll tell you what, though. Islam Makhachev clearly has the capability to choke Dustin Poirier unconscious. The problems that we've seen in his game, they're not fully revised, right? We did see Benoit Saint Denis get to his back. Islam Makhachev, savvy operator from the back, incredible grappler. We know how dangerous he is with his first-round submissions of high-quality individuals. He's taken Dan Hooker to the mat, put him in the Kimura series, almost ripped his arm off. we've just seen that Islam Makhachev, Drew Dober, another guy who's on that all-time knockouts list, he was able to ground him. He was able to put him on the mat. He was able to expose some of his deficiencies there, hold him down, put a big squeeze on him, and really suck the life out of Drew Dober and his will to compete. He just eliminated that from Drew Dober, who's a tough guy and a very willing competitor. So obviously, you've got two high-quality individuals. Make no mistake about that on both sides of this fight. The younger man here is Islam Makhachev, the defending champion. However, there's a lot of chatter and a lot of, talk about this is a one-sided fight. This isn't a competitive fight. And I do think that's a little bit overwrought. When you're looking at a guy like Islam Makhachev, let's examine the win streak, right? Like, let's talk about who he's been beating. He's a very quality fighter, right? And I think that if you watch his tape from before he ever arrived in the UFC, you will say to yourself, this is a guy who looks like he could easily be a world champion. And that's what has come to pass, right? He's a guy of the ilk, right? He has all the skill and all the talent and all the capability. But now let's talk about the actual win streak, because he is on a fantastic run in the UFC, 13 wins consecutively. What else can you say? But he's in the company of George St. Pierre. He's in the company of Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's in the company of, very quality fighters. Mighty Mouse, I believe, also 13 consecutive wins in the promotion. So we're, again, talking about some of the best fighters in the world. He's tied with them in his longevity of this win streak. But the recent wins, he beats Alexander Volkanovski in the rematch. We can all agree that was a diminished version of Volk. Volk can agree on that as well. I think that the version we saw take on Topuria was a more serious version of Volkanovski by far than the version that we saw take on Islam in that rematch. But in the first time that they fought, right, when they fought in Australia, very close fight, we saw Volkanovski go out there, put it on the line, really test Islam, really shut down some of the grappling that makes him so fantastic. He did get dropped in that fight. They exchanged heavy blows. Islam got dropped in that fight. And so what you saw was a little bit of vulnerability. Is he a quality champion? Of course. Beating somebody like Volkanovski at the time, I had been saying for years that Volkanovski was the best pound-for-pound fighter in the sport, and every dog has their day. I think that Islam Makhachev, has a very credible case for being the pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. However, every fight, every matchup is a little bit different. And when you look at the Volkanovski fight, that was a meeting of style versus style, clash of clash. But is Volkanovski known for being the most devastating finisher? He's just not, right? He's a very crafty fighter. He's clever. He can, find a way to beat people in all sorts of different ways, and he can hurt people and finish them. Look at the fight with Korean Zombie, right? He put him out in that fight, really hurt him several times. But again, Zombie's chin was kind of going. When you look at the really durable fighters that Alexander Volkanovski's fought, he hasn't put many of them away. Jose Aldo, he just blanked him on the scorecards. Max Holloway, he fought him for an eternity because he couldn't put him away. And Max Holloway obviously has an all-time great chin. But when you're looking at just some of the other opponents along the way, Volk is a great fighter, but not the most dynamic finisher. So then he comes up in a weight class against Islam Makhachev, who is a great round winner, a great manager of fights, a guy who can go out there and get takedowns. And so we saw in round 5, when Islam hadn't really been there before, he got tested. His cardio was wavering. He did look at the end of the fight defeated. Just if you were to judge that just on how people were both looking as the fight is ending, right? Islam's just laying on the ground, guy on top of him, and he didn't really look like he had much left to give. He won the rounds that he needed to get the win on paper. But again, it's just like, was that a great visual? Did that scream dominant champion? It did leave the door open for, man, this guy could be tested. He could be pushed. The Charles Oliveira fight, I feel like Charles didn't show the best version of himself that night. He was competing well in the wrestling and the grappling portion early, when the fight was upright, when the fight was on the feet. But I think what ended up happening is he got hurt badly on the feet. He got compromised. He got his guard passed. He was embarrassed. He was emotional coming into the fight. He was talking about, I'm going to kill this guy. He was over in a foreign land where everybody wanted to see him fail. And I think that he self-immolated. I don't think that we saw the best version of Charles. I think he competed much better against Arman Tsarukyan in his most recent fight. I think that would have been a more honest fight if we had seen that against Islam Makhachev. So again, the hat's off to Islam. He did everything he's supposed to do. He did his job. He got the win. He looked dominant that night. And by the way, I dumped a Bet Online account balance on Islam Makhachev at minus 185 because I just didn't understand how much love was coming in on Charles that night. And I'm a huge Charles fan. There's the Charles Oliveira glove up on my wall right there. I bet on Charles in the past. I've made money betting on Charles fights. But I thought to myself, like, this is a clear misprice. At minus 185, like this guy should be a bigger favorite. Now we're talking about a move in the opposite direction, right? So against Charles Oliveira, everybody wanted to bet Charles Oliveira. And, the line ends up coming way, way down. Same thing with Volkanovski, way, way down. Now you're looking at a fight where Dustin Poirier is the biggest underdog he's ever been in the UFC. And I think that is a little bit disrespectful. Now, is that to say that this is an easy fight? No, I mean, if you're not making Islam Makhachev the favorite here, then I'm not sure we're watching the same sport. But the thing that we have to say is the favorite, right, doesn't always win, right? The guy who's supposed to win doesn't always win. And this is a fight where I could definitely see Dustin Poirier being more competitive than people realize. For the reasons I listed in terms of the guillotine fundamentals, I think he's getting better with how he approaches the guillotine, not selling out for one attempt, but a little bit more like Karel Pravec says, use it to get better positions, use it to fatigue your opponent, but don't go from a better position to a worse position in pursuit of the guillotine. Use it to improve positions. I think that's a fundamental guillotine approach that could work even against high-level grapplers. I've seen it put to action. Worse grapplers can beat better grapplers with the guillotine. How many times do we have to see it in the UFC before people believe it? What's her name? Juliana Pena got put to sleep by Germaine Durandamy. Is it because she's better or worse at grappling? No, it's because she put her head in a vice grip. You hold that for about 6-7 seconds, somebody's going to sleep. Doesn't matter how good they are at grappling. Saeed Yakub Kakramanov, friend of the show, excellent grappler, excellent wrestler. He made one mistake against Saeed Nurmagomedov. He got his head put in that vice grip. It's a leveling position. One mistake, one time, you put your head out of position, and it could be the end of the fight. It could be a position where you get reversed to your back. It could be a position where you have to compromise your own position, flat back yourself in order to try and stay in the fight. It could be a very good, potent piece of offense. And then let's talk about this exchange on the feet, because we've seen one guy in Dustin Poirier put up all-time career great numbers in terms of knocking people down, hurting them, and finishing them in the lightweight division and in the UFC generally. I mean, the guy just has an incredible record to the knockdown. He's been knocked out a couple of times. You're going to get knocked out if you're exchanging leather at the distance and the speed and furiosity that somebody like Dustin Poirier tends to do. However, more often than not, he's putting guys on the wrong end of those shots, and he's hurting them very badly, whether it's body shots, whether it's knees, whether it's elbows, whether it's, those hooks. People talk about who's the best boxer in the UFC. The most frequent answer, I would argue, is Max Holloway. Why? Because he's a great salesman. He makes a great argument. He goes out there and tells you, hey, I'm the best boxer in the UFC. Then he dances circles around Calvin Kattar and teaches him about the freshman versus the senior. Then he goes out there against Justin Gaethje and absolutely puts on a leveling masterclass performance. However, when he fought Dustin Poirier, who had the better boxing that night? Dustin Poirier outboxed Max Holloway. So when people talk about Max Holloway as him, I agree with you. I had the ITD plus 950. I had Max Holloway as an underdog against Justin Gaethje at plus 200, close plus 145, look minus 260. But when you're talking about this fight right here, I think a lot of high-level pros are saying, man, this fight maybe is a little bit closer than people think. Who is, going to scare Dustin Poirier at this point in his career? His title opportunities have been against Charles Oliveira at the peak of his powers, then you're talking about he fights Khabib Nurmagomedov, peak of his powers. He really has been through the ringer in his career. He's fought the best guys. He's beaten how many UFC champions? So there's nothing new for this fight about, the Islam Makhachev challenge. He knows what to expect. The guy's going to try and wrestle him, grapple him, and embarrass him on the mat. He knows that up top, he's got to protect for that high kick. That is obviously what took him out against Justin Gaethje. Never saw it coming. We know that Islam Makhachev has a potent high kick of his own. He's got pretty fundamental boxing. He does not get hit very often, but have we seen him get hit before? Yes. Guys, we talk about the win streak of Islam Makhachev. The last time we saw him lose, it was Adriano Martins. It was very quickly. It was in the first round. It was a hook that he never saw coming with the right hand and put him down badly. And when you're looking at this guy, he's been clipped a couple of times, but he's done a great job recovering, getting on top of people, using his wrestling, using his grappling. And so far, he hasn't been made to pay for it, but he's gone to a couple of competitive decisions, right? It's not like he hasn't been pushed sometimes in fights that go the distance. And then when you're talking about fights that end inside the distance, he's had a bunch of great wins, a bunch of dominant wins, a bunch of, wrestling and grappling success. But when I look at this fight, I say to myself, this is a competitive fight. And I just don't believe that this is the biggest underdog price of Dustin Poirier's career. Now, in terms of the red flags, there's some talk about retirement, right? I actually used that as part of my justification for why I thought Benoit was value at minus 130. I was like, man, Dustin's probably going to retire after this fight if he loses. And he basically confirmed that. But did it matter? No, he still went out there and won. I think he still has enough left to give for one victory. I think he can pour out the jug. I don't know that he's going to walk away. I think it's too enticing if you win this fight to walk away. And I think all the monetary opportunities that would be opened up to him would be too big to pass up on. So for me, I don't think he's going to retire here unless he loses the fight. And I think that would have happened, maybe after his last fight if he had lost. But I think he's going to give every part of himself to win the belt. And that's what he's done so far with his career. That's what he's done with his life. He had many opportunities to quit against Benoit Saint Denis, didn't take the door, didn't take them. So for me, it just seems like a fight where you're going to get the best of both guys. And that sounds like a little bit more honest than, plus 460, plus 470, plus 480 or whatever that's popping on a guy like Dustin Poirier. Now, on the other side, if you like the Islam side, I've talked about this a little bit in the past. I do think that there's some reason to believe, hey, maybe shop around for the best prop price on a guy like Islam Makhachev. Do you want to pay the 90% money line, or do you want to try and say, hey, if he wins this fight, I think he's going to win it by this method. I think that's a clever way to get on the board. Shout out to the sharpest chat in the game. We got Harry says Islam ITD is a lock. Thank me later. No locks in life, my brother. I can't tell you how many times somebody's told me something's a lock, something's free, and then I have receipts on them. So I'll just say best of luck always. I wish everybody the best of luck, whether you're tailing, fading, or indifferent, whether you like the picks, whether you don't like them. But I'll just say, man, it seems to me like a lot of times when people say that, they're a little bit too overconfident, and overconfidence killed the cat. I could show you receipts on people saying Andre Fili, the lock of the week, the easiest parlay leg, and then he gets sparked by Joanderson Brito in like 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So just whenever you think something's a lock and free in mixed martial arts, I'll just remind you, this is a sport with 4-ounce gloves where people are doing the silliest thing known to man. They're throwing punches at each other's head, neck, and chest and hoping to stay awake for the duration. And I do think that there's a lot of volatility in every mixed martial arts fight. That is part of my handicapping approach. You guys know me. I look for underdogs. I look for big plus money opportunities. And I don't know what I'm going to do with this main event, but I'm never going to lay a minus 650 in a UFC title fight. You won't find me doing that. You won't find, evidence of that. And honestly, some of my biggest regrets from a MMA handicapping standpoint are not firing on big underdogs when I felt it. And so I would probably be more likely than not to lean towards the Poirier side from a money line bet. And again, why? It's the potential upside on somebody that's plus 460, plus 500 in a UFC title fight. And again, how did he get here? Did he get here by being a bum? Did he get here by being, a slouch? Like, no, he got here by being a world-class fighter, and he's beaten many guys. He's fought 5 rounds a lot of times. He's been scheduled for main events a lot of times. He has a ton of championship-level experience, again, against former champions, against current champions, against guys from a belt below. He fought at 145 when it was the premier division, fought Conor McGregor then, avenged those losses, came back at 155. So just anybody that's thinking this guy, Dustin Poirier, doesn't deserve respect or doesn't deserve these opportunities, I have to say, as a former Dustin Poirier hater, the guy has just earned my respect in blood over and over, beating my heroes, beating legend after legend, knocking out quality fighters. Eventually, you just have to give the devil his due, right? If you don't like Dustin Poirier, fair play. He's not my favorite guy in the world, but I'll tell you what, did he earn his opportunities? Yeah. Did he go out there and fight hard fights? Michael Chandler, I bet on him big. I bet on the fight ends by sub big, and I tweeted this the other day. The truth is, Michael Chandler cheated his ass off and still couldn't finish Dustin. He's got fingers in his mouth and his eyes and his nose. He's trying to do anything he can to submit this guy. And again, that's another opportunity of Dustin Poirier. If he wanted to, he has the door. There's the door, buddy. Big guy, scary guy, American wrestler on your back. He's gouging your eyes. He's fish hooking you. You could always say, hey, if that guy didn't cheat, he wouldn't have beat me. But what did he do? He reverses position. He submits him. And then when Michael Chandler tries to go buddy at the end, he lets him know. He gives him that veteran lesson with the finger whack. It tells him, hey, this is my octagon. This is my house. That's the kind of guy that's going to go out there and fight like a dog. He's not a guy that goes out there and gives up the same way. I said he broke against Khabib. He's in the corner talking about, I can't get this guy off me. If that happens again, hey, old demons die hard, right? Can't teach an old dog new tricks, all the same things. But that's not what I've seen in the subsequent bouts. I've seen a guy who continues to mature, who continues to get more money, more experience, more opportunities. By the way, after the Conor McGregor wins, you don't think Dustin Poirier could have kind of just called this a career and been like, hey, I got plenty of money. I got plenty of things under, plenty of awards on my shelf, plenty of respect from people. I'm done with all this fighting stuff. He didn't do that. And I think the reason being is this guy's motivated by one thing, the belt. He wants the belt. He wants it bad. He's always wanted it. He's gotten a lot of opportunities. He's got one more. He's not getting another. So I think you're going to get whatever Dustin Poirier has left. He's coming to pour out the jug, I believe, in Newark, New Jersey on Saturday night. I'm excited to say I'll be in the building, guys. I will be there. Prudential Center, it's going down. Very blessed to say I got an opportunity through one of my colleagues to go take in these fights live and in person. And I think that this is going to be a hell of a fight. And I think it's going to be a great main event. I think it's a worthy main event. And I'm excited to see how it shakes out. But you got a great champion. You got a great challenger. And I think you got a very high stakes fight. And there's a lot to lose for both guys, right? Islam has a chance to surpass his mentor, his idol, the guy who's going to be in his corner, the guy who's always had his back, Khabib Nurmagomedov, on that consecutive wins list in the UFC. And on the other side, there's some pressure that comes with that as well. So I think it's very possible he could go out there and get the win and show, hey, I've put before on this all-time UFC lightweights list, you kind of have to say Islam and Khabib, based on what they've done, they're right up there in terms of the all-time best. BJ, at his peak, obviously up there as well. But when you're talking about just what they've done, the success, they're right at the top. But he would have to, get a couple wins or get this big win to take that step forward. 14 wins in a row. That'd be nothing to sneeze at. That'd be an all-time great achievement. But it's not going to be easy, right? I don't think Dustin Poirier is going to go in there and lay down and give him the first round sub. I really don't. So I think that it's going to be a great scrap. And if he does get it, hats right off to him. But for me, again, props is the way I'm looking to target the favorite. If I'm going that way, I'm looking to get a little creative, maybe take an under, hope that somebody gets violent. I will say from a past experience point, I have had a lot of success not taking a side in Dustin Poirier fights and taking the under. And I know that he's gone over in some of these fights, the Dan Hooker, I pick my spots, but like the McGregor fights, these main event, these kind of featured bouts, I've just gone with the under 2.5, things like that, and had a lot of success. I've been very profitable betting Poirier fights, despite losing that last one on Benoit Saint Denis. So for me, this is a fight where Dustin Poirier coming for whatever he's got left in his career to empty the tank, and Islam Makhachev trying to prove a point, maybe trying to step out of that shadow of his mentor who's going to be in the corner, Khabib Nurmagomedov. So fascinating fight. I'm excited to see it all go down. Two of the most popular guys in the UFC, two of the most popular guys in the lightweight division. So I think the big fight feel is going to get there as we approach fight night on Saturday. But we're here on a Saturday, a little bit early this week, and wanted to get this main event first look to you guys. So here it is. We got it in stone. Great fight, and we'll have more for you guys on Thursday with bets and banter. So stay tuned for that. If you guys are new here, get subscribed to the channel where we talk fights each and every week. And we're coming off of a great week last week. I think it was plus 8 point some odd units. We're up 20 units on the year at a 20% ROI. Knock on wood, we can keep that rolling. It's a tough grind. It's a long year, but the goal is always more good bets, fewer bad bets, long-term process. And we bet a lot of plus money. We hope for underdogs. We root and support underdogs here as well. But the other thing is we only try and put our money in good spots, plus EV long-term spots. And sometimes they're going to work out. Sometimes they're not. I have some events that I don't hit any bets. But as long as I can look myself in the eyes and say, based on the information I had, these are plus EV looks that long-term will make me money, that's what I'm going to do each and every time. So I'm not worried about the short-term variance of, hey, did I do good on this event? Last week was a good event, but we're flushing it because we're right back to work always. The bookie's never going to pay you for the work you did last week. So just because we're having a good year doesn't mean we can take our foot off the gas or, stop paying attention.